name is Jorge Gonzalez. I'm a barber at Fort Worth Barbershop here in Fort Worth, Texas, which is home to the Dickies headquarters. And Dickies just brought me on to give some of you guys a little bit of a tutorial or guide on how to do a very quick and easy haircut at home until things kind of get back to normal and we're able to see our own barbers or stylists, whoever does our hair. So just to give you a quick rundown, we're going to go into an introduction to the tools that I'll be using here for this haircut. We're going to get into a basic hair prep and tool guide, explaining exactly what each of the tools do. We're going to get into the haircut itself, which is a number 1 fade, which is a really low maintenance, easy haircut. I'm not going to get to down to the skin or anything like that, just because the closer you get to stubble and skin, the more likely it is to just ramp up the complexity of the haircut. So you should probably just save that for your barber or stylist whenever you're able to see them again on a regular basis. Then we'll get to trimming around the ears and on the back of the neck. This is going to be a really useful guide for people who maybe don't want to cut their hair and they prefer to let their hair grow out, or now that they're growing out their hair, they like the way that it looks. The trimming part of this tutorial is going to be really useful for them to kind of get those hairs off the tops of the ears and off the back of the neck. And then at the very end of this video or this live stream, I'll take any questions that you guys might have. So feel free to hit the question mark at the bottom of the screen and ask whatever questions you want about this tutorial or anything about hair or anything like that. And like I said, I'll get to that at the end of the video. So first of all, let's talk about the tools. The first tool that we're going to use is a clipper. Now I have a Wall Senior cordless clipper. It doesn't have to be cordless. The most important thing about whatever clipper you have at home is that it has a lever, usually found on the left side of the clipper. As long as you have a lever, the lever is kind of what gauges how much hair you're cutting. So if the lever is closed in a closed position like that, it's going to cut a little more hair, and if it's open, it's going to cut a little bit less. The next tool is the trimmer. So a trimmer works similar to a clipper, but it's usually gets a lot closer to the skin than a clipper will. And the trimmer's only purpose really is to do detail work. So this is what you're going to use to go over the ear, behind the neck, and just kind of catch those little pieces of hair that form at the bottom of the neck. Then of course a comb, so that you can comb your hair in the right direction before cutting. And then the guards that you're going to be placing onto the clipper itself. These guards are basically a guide that you can use to make sure that you're not taking too much hair off at any given time. And we'll get into what guards I'm using and all of that in a little bit. And then last but not least, because this is an at-home haircut, you're going to need a second mirror, a handheld mirror. And this is going to be crucial to be able to see what's going on behind your head and on the back of the neck and everything like that. And I'll show you how to use a handheld mirror for at-home cuts. So before we get into the actual haircut itself, I'm going to explain a little bit of the anatomy of the head. And I won't get too technical, but there's just some parts of the head that are useful to know the names of, because I'll be referring to them from time to time. And it's going to really, really help you get the best haircut at home that you can get. So first of all, the hairline, the front hairline. We all know what our front hairline looks like because we look at it every time we look in into a mirror. The second part of the head that's important is the crown. So the crown is where the top of your head meets the back of your head. It's this kind of circular area right here. This is important because this is where most people, if not all people, have what we call a cowlick or a swirl. So it's where the hair changes direction of growth. It's very important to know where your cowlick is or your swirl on the back of your head, because if you cut into it the wrong way, you can get hairs that just spring up, or you can take chunks out of your hair. The density changes on the crown of the head, so it's important to know where it is, and you can find it by using that handheld mirror, looking into a bigger mirror, and just kind of find where that swirl is. And then the next part is the parietal ridge, which is usually found somewhere in between your front hairline and your eyebrow. It's really easy to find. All you have to do is use that comb and just press it to the side of your head. Wherever the curvature of your head starts, that's your parietal ridge. So mine is pretty easy to notice because I have a pretty big head, but you can see it right there. So that's where my parietal ridge starts, and we'll get into why it's important to know that. And then the very last part is your occipital bone, which is the little bone on the back of your head that kind of protrudes. That's really mostly important when you're cutting the back of your head, because generally speaking, everyone's head shape is different, but generally speaking, your occipital bone is somewhere in the middle of the crown and the back of your hairline. So it's good to know where it is, because you can kind of feel for it while you're cutting hair to know that you're not going too high with the fade. The next thing that you should know is, going back to the cowlick and the crown of the head, where your hair grows, what direction it grows in order for it to lay flat. So I kind of already did this myself. I kind of combed this already. My hair grows from my left temple to my right temple, or in a clockwise fashion. Is where my my cowlick is. So it goes clockwise, so it just kind of goes in this direction. So mine's kind of simple. Some people have 2 cowlicks, multiple cowlicks, and hair grows in different directions. The key is making sure that your hair is flat, and you want to do it while it's dry, because when your hair is wet, water adds weight to your hair, so you can a lot of times push it in different directions and it'll lay down no matter what. So you want to make sure your hair is dry when you're combing it, and just make sure that it's in a flat, natural position. There aren't any hairs sticking up or anything like that. The last thing that we want to talk about is clipper angle. And what I mean by clipper angle is going back to the parietal ridge that I was talking about before, this right here. You want to make sure that when you're using your clippers on the side of your head, that you're not going past this line that your comb is making. So there's this kind of imaginary line that you can envision right here with this comb. Your clipper is basically going to follow that line all the way up. So if you start cutting your hair, you want to kind of follow this straight line off the side of your head, and make sure that you're not digging in to the top of your head. Once you start digging into the top of your head, you're cutting the hair on top of your head, and it can give you sort of this egg-shaped look that usually isn't very desirable. So I would make sure that practice without a clipper attached to the guard. Just practice. Pretend like you're cutting your hair and just go off the side of your head, making sure that that clipper guard is going in a straight line and it's not digging in. So now we're going to talk about the guards themselves. So in my hand, I had a number 3 guard. That's the highest guard that I'm going to use for this haircut. I don't have a ton of hair. And again, this is a simple tutorial. So a number 3 guard, also known as a 10 millimeter guard, is the biggest guard that I'm going to use. And you can kind of see, let's see right there. You can kind of see the thickness that it has. My next guard is going to be a number 2 guard, and the number 2 guard's a little bit thinner, and then a number 1 guard is a little bit thinner than that. So the lower the number gets, the more hair it's going to take off, the shorter your hair will be after you clip it. So I'm going with the number 3 as the highest guard, number 2, number 1, And then I've also got a half guard as well, but the half guard we're gonna save for the back of the neck. So really quickly, it's gonna go 3, 2, 1. We're gonna fade down. Fading down just ensures that we're not taking the blend too high up and then all of a sudden we end up with like a high and tight. So again, 3, 2, 1, and then the half guard goes on the back of the neck. So let's see here. Now we're gonna get into actually cutting our hair. And excuse me if these clippers are a little bit loud. So we're gonna get this clipper and we're gonna make sure that it's in the closed position. So the teeth are almost right up against or as close to the blade guard as possible. We're gonna get our number 3 guard and just clip it in. And again, following the parietal ridge or going off the parietal ridge of the head, we're just gonna get to it. So you're gonna get the number 3. Once you get to a point where you can no longer see what you're doing, stop. Don't go any further. Don't go to the back of your head or anything like that because you can't see what's behind you, obviously. So once you get this side done and you can see the disconnection right there, that's what you want to see. We'll blend this in a little bit later. Once you can see that disconnection, stop, go on the other side, do the same thing. You can kind of go over it a couple times if you need to. All right. Now, going back to this disconnection right here, you can see the hair's a little bit long right there. What you're going to want to do is just kind of comb that hair over there so you can see that line. Still with the number 3 guard on the clipper, you're going to open it now. And you're gonna do the same thing. Just go off the side of your head and it'll start to blend that disconnection in. Then just kind of comb it back down. It's getting a little better, but there's still a little bit of a line there. This is where you can sort of angle just a little bit just to get those extra hairs to blend in. So not too much of an angle, but just a little bit to make sure those hairs blend in and you don't have a really dark line on the side of your head. There you go. See how it's a lot more blended than it was before. So now we're done with the number 3. We don't really need it anymore. We'll go on to our number 2 guard. Put that on the clipper. Again, closed. And you're going to go just below the number 3. So you put I took the number 3 straight off the head. I'm going to go just below that, kind of near my temple area, and cut that part. So here we go. Again, stop when you can no longer see where you're cutting. We'll get to the back in a little bit. Now I'm going to go with the number 1. Put it on. Now, because the number 1 is a little closer to the skin than the 2 and the 3, we're actually going to use the lever open this time. And this 1 open essentially turns into a 1.5. That's going to make the blend from the 2 to the 1 a little bit smoother. So same exact concept, just go a little bit lower. So where the curvature of my hairline right here starts, I'm gonna start just below that and just kind of go right behind my ear. Cool. And what you'll notice is the shorter I get with the guards, the more I go with between the 3 and the 2, the 2 and the 1, and you'll see the 1 and the 1.5. You'll start to see me kind of flick the clipper a little bit. It's just a technique that barbers use to make sure that the blend's a little bit smoother. So when I'm going in with the 1.5, I'll kind of do a C-cup motion just to make sure that I'm not digging in to that previous guard that I used. So I'll just use a little bit of a C-cup motion, and I'll kind of go around the ear like that. Same thing on the other side with the 1.5. Cool. Now, same one guard, we're gonna close it to make it a true one guard. So going 1.5 to 1. And then just the sideburns. Really, you're not gonna go too high with this. Just go right where the top of the ear is. So, that's pretty much it, at least for the sides. The reason we do the sides first is it gives us a guideline so that when we look at the back, we know what 2 points to match up to. So what I'm gonna do is, I have a separate towel. I'll just kind of dust myself off here. Give yourself a clean slate to work with. And then we're gonna move on to the back, and then after that we'll go with the trimmers over the ears and everything like that. So I'm just gonna check for myself in the mirror in my bathroom to make sure everything's good. See if I missed a spot, which I didn't, so we're good. So now we're gonna go on to the back, and so it's gonna look a little bit like a mullet, but that's okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna sit up onto my counter so you guys can see a little better. This is where the mirror comes in handy. So you're gonna use your handheld mirror, place yourself in between your handheld and the mirror in your restroom or outside, wherever it is that you're doing your haircut. I'm actually gonna use the live stream as my mirror. So you're gonna put yourself in between your mirror, handheld, and your stationary mirror, and you'll be able to see kind of that transition right there. Now, what you also might be able to see is a dark spot. Generally behind the ear, the head sort of dips in a little bit. There are a couple like dimples. Those dark spots, we'll take care of them in a second to make sure that the blend is even all the way through. And a lot of that's gonna get taken out once you start cutting the back of your head. So you're gonna get your number 3 guard again. Again, going top to bottom. Number 3 guard, lever closed. Use your mirror, look into your handheld, and then position it to where you can see. I'll use the Instagram, there you go. So position it to where you can see the uncut hair. Get your clipper, and I find that when you're cutting the back of your head, it's a lot easier to hold your clipper like a pencil, where your index finger is on top, thumb is under the bottom, and just kind of draw with it almost. So that's how I'm gonna hold it. So turn it on, and then just go lay the clipper flat onto your head. Again, keeping in mind the parietal ridge right about here. So I'm going straight off the side of my head and not digging in, because my cowlick is right here. If I dig into that cowlick, I might create a little bit of a patch, and we don't want that. All right. So now that you've got that taken care of with the number 3 guard, just kind of make sure, I know this looks really funny, we'll clean that up, but just make sure, focus on this part right below the crown or around the crown area, and just make sure that it matches up with where you stop the number 3 right about here, next to the, or off the parietal ridge. Now you'll switch to your number 2 guard, and I know I've got a lot of hair on my shoulders. Let's dust that off. All right. Get your number 2 guard on the clipper, still lever closed. Same thing. Just kind of match it up with what you did earlier with the number 2 guard. Make sure you guys can see. There you go. So just below. All right. So once again, dust yourself off. Starting to look a lot better. Really nice light blend, nothing extreme, but this will last you at least a few weeks until you need it to do it again, or you can see your barber or stylist whenever they open up shop again. Just kind of clean yourself off. Now we're gonna go down to from number 2 to number 1. Again, like we did with the side, since we're going down to the number 1, we're gonna open that lever and turn it into a 1.5. And then just attack where you previously did the 1.5, which is right about the temple. This is the part where it's really useful to know where your occipital bone is, because generally you're going to use the 1.5 and sort of drop it a little bit right to where your occipital bone is. So you get your mirror and you can kind of see my occipital bone is right about there. So I'm going to get these clippers with the 1.5 and drop it to right about in that area. And it's at about this time that you'll start to notice the dimple in the back of your head. And you'll start to notice a little bit of like a dark line right here. Perfectly normal, perfectly fine. While we're on this side of the head, we're gonna go back to our number 2. We're just gonna dig into that just a little bit. So number 2, close lever. Just make sure you go over that a few times. You can be a little bit more rough with it, but make sure when you're doing this, you're not going up to where you had the number 3. Now go back to your number 1 guard, lever open. And then with a gentle hand, go over that same dark spot. It also might help to use the corners of the clipper to just kind of dig into that dimple instead of taking the entire clipper up and then potentially raising your fade. You don't want to do that. All right, that looks a lot better. Also, since we're on this side, we're going to go ahead and close the number 1 lever and then just go right below that occipital bone. Cool. Back on this side, I'm going to use the number 2 close again just to make sure that I get the hair that's near that dimple taken care of. so I can just go straight into it with the number 1.5. Now one guard, halfway open, or open up the clipper all the way to make it a 1.5. Let's see in the live stream. Looks pretty good. So close the one guard, or the lever all the way to make the one guard a true one guard. And then just below the occipital bone. So dust yourself off once again. Always working with a clean slate. Behind the ears. Check in the mirror. Get a little bit closer to the mirror so you can really see what's going on. Looks pretty good to me. Might have a little bit of a bulk line right there, which we'll take care of in a second. And then check this side. Cool. So now we're going to get to the back of the neck. This is where things get a little more technical. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I'm going to taper my hair into the skin or blend it into the back of the neck. So I'm going to use my half guard, which is one step down from the one, open it, and then blend it. I took the one closed just below the occipital bone. I'm going to take the half guard open just below that. Then I'm going to close it and go just below that. Same thing on the other side. So now we're going to move on to the detail work. This is where the trimmer comes in. So this trimmer, you're really going to focus on using the corners of the blade for the most amount of precision. I normally don't mess with my natural hairline up front. So if you want to, you can kind of use a little C-shaped motion with the corner of your blade and kind of get that, but that's personal preference. This is the part where you can really turn a decent at-home haircut into a terrible one, and one that you're going to have to wear hats all day to hide. This gets really close to the skin, about as close as you can get without shaving the hair. So you're going to be really, really careful with this. So in order to do your detail work, you're going to get a comb, and you're just going to comb all the hair towards your ear. And then you're going to get really close to the mirror, in this case, the camera. You're going to turn it on and you're just going to use the corner of the blade. And you're just going to kind of do a C-shaped motion right over your ear. So here we go. Also make sure you pull your ear out of the way when you do that. And then again, stop when you can no longer see what you're cutting. I can't see what I'm cutting there, so I'm going to stop there. Then I'm going to pull my ear down, and I'm going to probably have to use my mirror in order to see this part. But that hair that you comb down, you're just going to follow the natural hairline right there. Oh, let's try it. Looks pretty solid to me. Do the other side. Again, using the corner of the trimmer. Let's see. Let's use this. Left hand. Good. Then you're going to use your mirror, hop back up on the counter. This is the hard part. Because obviously you're going to use this mirror, your handheld, to position the trimmer along your hairline, the neckline. But everything's going to be not just mirrored, but also inverted. So what I recommend is leave your trimmers off. Look at, using your handheld mirror, look at that neckline, your natural neckline, and just place the trimmer without it being on. Just place it onto your neckline until it's straight. And you can use that part that you trimmed behind your ear as a guideline. So just put it right about there, and if you need to kind of bend your ear back, you can, or bend your ear down. Use it as a guideline and just kind of imagine yourself trimming. Once you feel comfortable with that, then you can turn it on. So turn it on. Don't drop your clippers. All right, they're fine. All right, dust yourself off. And then do the same thing on the other side. So just kind of, it's gonna be a little weird at first, but just place them without them being on where they're gonna go, and then you can turn it on. Check your work. Not too bad. All right. Now that that's done, let's see here. Let's get all this hair off this counter. That's pretty much the haircut. Now, once you're done, I highly recommend to kind of find those dark spots if you do see any, which I did see one, and I'm not going to ignore it on this. Right around the crown area, there's a little bit of bulk. We're going to take it out the same way we took out the bulk on the side of the head. Get your number 3 guard, open the lever, find it, and then just kind of go over it a couple times. If you need to slightly angle the clipper, you can, but just make sure you're not following the curvature of your head. So there's a patch right, or a dark spot right here. So we're just going to kind of go over that. That looks a lot better. And then there's another one right about there. With this one, I'm going to make sure, because it's close to my cowlick or my swirl, I'm going to make sure that the hair is combed in the direction that it's supposed to be. So I'm not taking off any hair that I don't want to take off. Cool. And then just go at it. 3 open. Sweet. Again, dust yourself off, comb everything in the right direction. Still a little bit right there. That's better. And there you go. That's how to do a quick at-home haircut tutorial. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me down in the little question box below. But that's really about it. This is more than enough to hold you off, like I said, for a few weeks until things hopefully get back to normal at some point and you can go see your barber or stylist on a more regular basis. But other than that, it's a nice, easy, simple haircut tutorial. It's short, but not too short, just a little bit of skin right there that you can see through. But it's gonna last you a little while. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that. I enjoyed making this video. I've never done a live stream before, so it was really cool. I'd like to thank Dickies for giving me the opportunity to do this.